Vice President McFadden,
Here.
Councilmember Clifford,
Here.
Councilmember Evans, Councilmember Patterson, President Scott.
Let the record reflect that we're also joined by Council Members Ortiz, Lightfoot, and Gruber. Introductory item number 22, authorizing the cancellation or refund of erroneous taxes and charges. Any questions or comments on this item?
Move to adopt.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Against? Motion carries. Introductory item number 23, authorizing the mandatory agreement for support and enhancement of Extron Web Content Management System. Comments or questions on this item? Councilmember Lightfoot? Oh, I'm sorry.
Move it.
I'll entertain a motion. I got one movement. I need a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. Introductory item number 24, authorizing a mandatory agreement with Tyler Technologies. Comments, questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So
Move
moved.
it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. And introductory item number 46, I'm going to hold in committee, and we'll bring it out on Tuesday. If that's okay. Anybody have any questions on it before I hold it? Yes, ma'am.
I was just interested in the answer to Malik's question about the downtown development districts and how that works. I guess I read that as sort of an RDDC possibility, but maybe that's not accurate. Can you just tell me a little bit more how that works in those other communities?
Are you talking about the first question, how will success of this pilot be measured?
Oh,
or-
I'm sorry, the second question. Other cities that have similar advertising programs and the fact that they're coordinated through, that's the way I read it.
So we're in a process of course, council had approved, I believe last month, a pilot project, not a pilot project, but a study on how to develop a downtown sort of management entity with the Finger Lakes Regional Economic Development Council. And so our hope is that eventually, if this is successful, that we would turn that over to them. So we are working with one of the National League of Cities experts on developing that, and of course working with our downtown partners, RDDC, the Chamber, as well as GRE. And so that will probably feed the discussion about if we expand this or not. For right now, it will be internal, and our internal folks will be the ones that will be vetting and advertising and making sure that it is falls within the parameters that council sets. And this committee that will be set up by having council representatives as well as city representatives, administration representatives, will sort of govern that. And so our hope is that eventually we'll move into that space, but we're not there yet.
Great. And we're still pretty committed to focusing on the downtown core for now for the pilot.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Just one other thought. Hi, sorry. So there's some locations I'm going to give you. Let me just think of something. The Skyway between our buildings by the convention center. There's a Skyway there, and Tim and I had a chance to talk about this. So they're currently using that space, selling it. Often it's part of the conference or convention that's coming in. They might use that space for one of the vendors. So they would obviously want to make sure that either they could continue to do that or somehow work within our new system. So Justin, we haven't had a chance to meet yet, but maybe we could chat a little bit if this goes forward about how you guys would want to connect with folks that may already be doing something. I don't know whether we authorized it or it was just part of the package there, but it's owned by the city, so there's that. But they have had the opportunity, I think, to sell, to leverage just a little bit more. Maybe it's not even for a fee. Maybe it's just as a way to say thank you. And so as people are walking from the parking garage, you know, that Skyway into the convention center. Yeah. So that's not in here anywhere, but it's the kind of thing that we have to think about. And I'd be happy to share some thoughts with you guys once this goes forward.
All right. We would want to work with the convention center and our partners to really promote the advertising and to work with them if they're already doing some things like
Right.
Visit Rochester, and all of those events that are happening in downtown in the summertime and, you know, the winter wonderland. So we would work with them and not do this separate and apart. I think that that's part of the reason why we wanted to set up the committee, so that we could have those voices, be able to tell a group of people what they're looking at and what the opportunities are. But we'll gladly make sure that everybody has a opportunity to be heard.
So do you think we would expand the membership of the committee to include someone from the convention center? Or I'm just thinking about how that might, even before we get too far in, I'm not sure that we need somebody from all the entities, but I mean, I think about Don Jeffries from Visit Rochester. He sits on the convention center board with us, or maybe a Jim Brown, who's a big picture thinker. Just a thought.
Something that
something we
I'm definitely think that we can look at, just because the members of the committee we haven't selected
Yeah.
them yet.
Yeah.
And so I think that that would be in concert with you as the chair of the Arts and Downtown Committee, as
Right.
well as our communications team.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about that with Justin later on what that committee is comprised of,
Could look
then
like.
we'll gladly sit down and chat with you about
Yeah.
that.
Sounds good. Thank you. And thank you to Tim, who helped me think through. I was going like, we have a UBIT problem here, you know, we're going to have to pay business tax. And he's like, yeah, I think we're good. So, you know, my mind was going to all kinds of other places. It's city-owned. It's not, you know, I'm thinking, is it competition with Lamar? Are they going to want to have us, you know, have a business income tax problem? I think we'll be okay with all that. So, thank you.
Any other comments?
The only other thing I wanted to say is I do think it's a good opportunity to also have some quality control with some of our advertising efforts. I was thinking about the port and the William A. Johnson Jr. Terminal building, because it's kind of a free-for-all there right now in terms of signage and promoting businesses inside. So I think there are some advantages to at least having, you know, some review of what's around on our property. So, thanks.
President Scott?
Mayor, question 1, 2, 3, 4, the last sentence. I'd like to see something a little more specific on this. It says that if there was interest in a particular neighborhood outside of Center City, the pilot committee would weigh community concerns heavily in considering any advertising and involve community groups in the discussion. Can we spell out what that process will be? Because what I don't want to see is the discussion happen after people see banners and signs on their neighborhood street corner. And that's when they get upset and want to have the meetings. And
So we would not put out neighborhood signs and banners in specific areas unless it had been properly vetted through those community associations and groups. Right now, we're not even focusing on doing anything in the neighborhoods. I think that, you know, what Councilmember Clifford just raised about the port, we can maybe look at that building, the inside of that building, but this pilot is not to allow for any advertisement to be done in any of the neighborhoods. It's just a concentration specifically in downtown, and that committee will be focused on just looking at downtown. If a neighborhood association, say for example, Cornhill, during the Cornhill Arts Festival, wanted to do advertisement on like some of the streets and sidewalks while people were walking around during Cornhill, and they wanted to sell advertisement, then that's probably what we're talking about. Or during the Park Avenue Festival, if they wanted to put advertisement on the road during that festival, that's something specific like that, but not anything that would be outside of that realm at this point in time. Those are specific events that the committee may want to look at, but right now, until the pilot is actually up and running and we get to see what kinds of advertisement, the opportunity for advertisement, and what businesses are coming to us, then we wouldn't be looking at doing anything in any neighborhoods that would impact community associations at all.
Any other comments, questions? Any other business to come before the committee? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
At this time, I call the Neighborhood and Business Development Committee to order, and I ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Patterson.
Here.
Councilmember Lightfoot. Councilmember Ortiz. Vice President McFadden.
Here.
President Scott.
Here.
And let the record reflect that we are joined by all other council members, save Councilmember Evans. Introductory number 25, authorizing the sale of real estate. Questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, I need a motion and a second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Item passes. Introductory number 26, authorizing agreement and amending ordinance number 2018-263 related to the 2018-2019 Street Liaisons Programs. Questions, comments, concerns? Councilmember Ortiz.
So, just a request, we were given the scope of services. Can we get an update on the scope of services when you have a chance on how we're doing regarding that criteria for each of the current street managers, please?
Do you want last year's?
That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, need a motion and a second.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item passes. Introductory number 27, authorizing the sale of a land parcel at 125 Howell Street. Questions, comments, and concerns? Councilmember Spall.
Yeah, this is Ann here? No. Ann is not here. My friend Ann, who has been answering a million emails from me. Thank you for that. Trying to figure out how, this is a teeny, hi Dana. It's a teeny parcel.
Yes.
1.3 acres. The one that is back on the market, that's not going to go, the one near Sherwin-Williams, is almost, is 1.4, is huge compared to this, right? Parcel 7. So that one is almost a half acre. Mr. Lasher has been going to neighborhood meetings around his other project. I'm not sure that they wouldn't love to see him on this. I don't know if he's here or not, but there could be issues that are raised by the Wadsworth Square people. I think they've met many times. I don't know whether there's a resolution on that now or not. So,
Well,
are you hearing any more?
He is here, and he
Oh,
has
here he is. There you
spoken
are.
to the
Hi.
community group on this subject, but we can
Okay.
encourage him to continue.
So, you know, they're confusing your Broadway project, right? I mean, oh, there's Ann. Hi, Ann. Do you want to come on up just for a second? So there's two projects that you're working on, and it's the same neighborhood that wants to talk to you constantly. So first of all, thank you for your patience with the Broadway project. You've been back several times.
Yes.
Yes, I was at one of the meetings, and then we had a council meeting when you had another one. Have you met with them specifically about this project?
So I presented both, well, about 2 months ago, we probably a third meeting on the Broadway Street project.
Right.
So at the end of that meeting, I presented the Howell Street project. So they've seen the application, they've reviewed the renderings.
Okay.
The floor plans, we have not gotten into any further detail.
Okay.
But they have seen the application, we've reviewed it.
Okay, I'm going to meet with some of them tomorrow at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
So I'm not on the committee, so I can't vote, but I'm just trying to figure out whether there's, they're sort of combining both projects, and they're worried about Broadway, and they're also now worried about Howell, even though Howell's a tiny, tell me, the footprint's very small, isn't it? Is it 4 units?
It's 5 units.
5 units.
And it's less than 6,000 square feet.
Right.
Land, yeah.
Okay. The whole parcel is at one point, Ann, God bless you, you're so patient with me. Yeah, but I mean, then finally Ann sent me a drawing. She's like, okay, Councilwoman, let me just show you what it looks like. That was so helpful. Because one of the things that's happening is the parcel that was the FedEx parcel is getting confused with all the other ones, but I got it straight now. So it sounds like this one, the footprint is right. We've got no issues in terms of height, variance, so I'm good. I'm not on the committee, but I felt like I wanted to just clarify for folks. I think there's some questions up here, and Councilman Gruber may have some as you guys have questions. I was just trying to make sure we knew what we were talking about. First of all, it's a very small parcel. Is there sufficient parking on that for you guys? What do you have?
The building behind it, my office is actually
Yeah.
behind it.
Right.
And parking is provided underneath the units. It's slab on grade, but the garages are on the first floor.
Okay.
Living spaces is on second.
Okay, and are they all market rate at this point, the 5 of them? Okay. And you're not coming to us for anything, but you're going to Imagine Monroe for something?
Correct.
Okay.
Just if you don't mind, I'll back up a step. The neighborhood association, when I met with them, you're correct, they're very concerned about Broadway.
I know.
And rightfully so, it's right next to their homes and their
Right.
townhomes.
Right.
They did not seem to be concerned about Howell Street. They love the design. I'm sure they'll have comments when you meet with them tomorrow.
Okay.
But it wasn't nearly as intense or complicated as Broadway.
Yes. There's multiple emails going back and forth with Mr. Darcy. So, yeah. Thank you. I'm good. These guys may have questions.
Any other questions? Councilmember Gruber?
Yes, thank you. Actually, this is for the administration. I appreciate your comments, and I'm sure that Elaine will get to the bottom of whether or not the neighborhood supports or not. My question, or maybe just comment for NBD is, when I ask a question about whether the developer has engaged or not, I'd love to get to a point where it wasn't couched in sort ofs, because the answer that came back was that the developer has indicated to NPD that he has started discussing the project. I just want that to be a yes, absolutely. Before it comes to us for a vote, we as NBD know for sure that those conversations have happened, and I think we just have a little ways to go to get there.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none, need a motion and a second.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item passes.
Councilmember? Oh, I'm sorry, you can go ahead. Thank you. I just want to be clear that on a lot of these projects, just so we're not given a false narrative, there will be people that are in support and there will be people that are in opposition. And so we can indicate that the developer has spoken to people, but there are a lot of times when, the developer has spoken to a group of people and they may have agreed to and said, oh yeah, this is a great idea. And then when somebody else gets wind of it, then they say, well, I never was spoken to. So we can make, every effort to make sure that we're clear about that. But I just want to make sure that we don't give council a false narrative that the developer has spoken to people and they may be in support of it, but they may not have spoken to and done door knocking to everybody, and other folks that may not have been in the room or at that particular meeting gets the information and they're not in support of it.
If there's one thing I've learned in 13 months, it's that. I get that, I promise. But that's why I specifically, I didn't ask the question, does the neighborhood support? I said, has the developer engaged with the neighborhood? And the answer that came back was that the developer has indicated that he has started to. That should just be a yes. Even if there's not support, and that comes to us to determine how that whole thing should or should not look, I just want to know with certainty that during the whole application process, there is an absolute mandate that there has to be a conversation with the neighborhood association. But your point is well taken, Mayor.
Introductory number 28, authorizing an intermunicipal agreement with the County of Monroe to fund enforcement of the lead-based paint poisoning prevention ordinance. Questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, motion in a second. Second. All in favor? Aye. Item passes. And we have an item that's being held, and that is introductory number 5, determinations and findings related to the acquisition of properties to establish a new Goodman Section office for the Rochester Police Department and a new neighborhood service center for the city's southeast quadrant. Questions, comments, or concerns? We covered a big chunk of this last month and we held it to this month because we needed to do notice for the public hearing. That's been completed. But at this time, are there any members of council who have any questions, comments, concerns, issues? No questions, no comments, no concerns, no issues. All right, so at this time, I need a motion to consider.
So moved.
Second. Need a second? All right, all in favor? Aye. Wow. Okay. Item passes. Is there any other business to come before this committee? Seeing none, we are adjourned.
420. Sub in for Councilmember Evans to chair the Parks and Public Works Committee. But just to have everyone know, Councilmember Evans is a real banker. I am a food banker, which means that if I don't get the Roberts rules right, please don't hold that against me, and I expect BJ will tell me when I'm wrong. So with that said, can the clerk call the roll?
Councilmember Evans, Councilmember Gruber,
Here.
Councilmember Spall,
Here.
Vice President McFadden,
Here.
President Scott.
Here.
And it should be noted that we are joined by the rest of the esteemed members of this body. Introductory number 29, bond ordinance of the City of Rochester, New York, authorizing the issuance of $1,510,000 bonds of said city to finance the cost of the South Avenue parking garage lighting and electrical system replacement project. Comments or questions?
Move to
Councilmember
adopt.
Clifford.
Thank you, Chairman appointee,
Yeah.
temporary. I made the mistake of not asking a specific question, so I didn't get a specific answer about the South Avenue parking garage's profitability. I guess I just wanted to know, are we up, down, are we on par? Where are we?
That's a question for municipal parking, and we will get back to you with that.
Fantastic, thank you.
Councilwoman Clifford, I can respond to that in the back here. So on an operating basis, you know, we make money in that the convention center actually operates that garage, right? And they operate that at a profit, so that helps contribute towards the funding of the convention center. When you look at capital costs, you know, going forward, when you factor those in, it's not profitable.
Right, gotcha. I guess I was just looking sort of year over year, perhaps, maybe the last 3 years. Does it hold at these numbers essentially or not?
Yes, the last few years it's held at those numbers.
Thank you.
Do I need to abstain? Psst, psst. Do I need to abstain? No. Okay, thank you.
Any further comments or questions? Can I have a motion?
So moved?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Introductory number 30, amending the official map, a public hearing to be held at 5 p.m. After this committee meeting. Any comments or questions?
So moved?
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Introductory number 31, authorizing the acceptance of right-of-way from the New York State Department of Transportation and amending the official map by dedicating for street purposes land to be named Carges Place. Am I saying that correctly? Carges Place?
Yep.
Public hearing to be held at 5 p.m. after this committee meeting. Any questions or comments?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Introductory number 32, amending ordinance number 2018-67 relating to a resident project representation services for the hazardous sidewalk replacement program. Any questions or comments?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Introductory number 33.
Councilmember Gruber, I think we have to go back to 30 and 31. Those are motions to consider.
My
So-
first Roberts error. It was bound to happen. So start all over with 30?
Okay, we'll just make the correction. We'll make the correction if all are in favor.
After.
We'll assume the correction.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just said so moved, so I think it's
Right, so
general. You're
we'll
good.
fill it in.
We'll fill it in.
Great. I knew what I was doing, I swear.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it.
Introductory number 33, authorizing an agreement with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation for the disposition of electronic waste material. Any questions or comments? I will say thank you for the answer for my question. It sounds like it was a very successful event, and I'm only hopeful that we can do more of them in the future.
We plan on having another one this year in conjunction with Clean Sweep. And one thing we did not acknowledge in this actual transmittal was the support from Assemblyman Harry Bronson. He's been an advocate for this for many years, and we need to acknowledge him for providing the substantial financial support for this.
Wonderful. Great that we have support from both houses. Okay,
So moved.
can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Introductory number 34, authorizing an intermunicipal lease agreement for radio transmitting equipment. Any questions or comments? Can I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Introductory number 35, authorizing an agreement for the supply of electricity to city facilities. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Clifford.
I forwarded, I think, or I responded to the email that we received today asking if we could get just clarification from DES. I don't know if that actually ended up going to DES today. Does anybody know? Okay, sorry. We had received an email from a constituent with a couple of issues about this, in support of, but asking a couple questions about it. And it sounds like we didn't get them to you, so I will forward that email to you if you wouldn't mind responding.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We had two introductories that held last month. The first, introductory number 10, approving geometric changes related to the Atlantic Avenue Merriman Street Safety Improvement Projects. We had to hold because we didn't have enough time for the public hearings, but that has now been addressed. So can I have a motion to consider?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And finally, introductory number 20, amending the municipal code with regard to the telecommunications facilities in the right-of-way. We received a very significant and substantial amendment today, and council just has not had enough time to review it yet. So Chair Evans will be back in touch with the administration, but we will hold it now knowing that the amendment is on the table. Any other business for the Parks and Public Works Committee? With that, we are adjourned.
Should we have amended, should we have amended it? BJ, should we have amended it and then held it? It's okay.
Just giving our people a little bit of time to transition there.
Council President, on item number 20, if we could get the questions from council and have those answered by Tuesday, is it possible that we can move that legislation forward? It is the telecommunications facilities in the right-of-way.
So the meeting is
Mayor?
The one that we got the amendment on today?
Correct.
I would imagine. We just haven't had a chance to look at the.
Right. No, I'm just saying if we can.
I spoke with Councilmember Evans, and he identified that he would be amenable to bringing it out on Tuesday the 19th.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Isn't our meeting the
Sorry, would it be possible, though, for maybe Corporation Council to just do maybe an outline of kind of the major issues that have been addressed in that legislation?
Yes, we can provide that.
The changes that were made or the ordinance itself? Okay. Can do that.
There's a,
Is there a time pressure on this?
So it's not
What's
to
up?
the 19th, guys. Remember that. We have a whole nother week. It's not to, the council meeting is the 19th, so we have about 10 days. So we should be able to get you whatever you need. I'm not the chair, but I would think that we've got, so it's not this Tuesday, we have a whole nother week. Did we take off because of Valentine's Day? Oh, okay. I thought you guys were all of a sudden really romantic or something.
It's Lincoln.
So we've got till the 19th. Yeah,
All right.
it'll be fine. I know you're going to miss me.
Councilmember Spall. Mayor, is there a time pressure on this legislation, number 20?
It just takes a lot to, it's not a time pressure as in we're under a deadline for implementation. It's just that it's a comprehensive piece of legislation, and it's going to take us time to actually get it up and running for, and we want to be able to include some of that in our
For this
budget, in
upcoming
our
budget
fiscal
count. Okay.
1920 budget.
Got it.
And so that's why we want to make sure that we have it.
Got it. Thanks.
At this time, I'd like to call the Public Safety, Youth, and Recreation Committee to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Lightfoot,
Present.
Councilmember Gruber,
Here.
Councilmember Ortiz, Vice President McFadden, President Scott.
Here.
Let the record reflect that we are also joined by other members of the council, with the exception of Councilmember Evans. Introductory number 36, authorizing agreement for the body-worn camera program. Any questions, comments, and/or concerns? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Introduction number 37, authorizing a mandatory agreement related to the PetSmart Charities 2018 Spay Neuter Grant. Any questions, comments, and/or concerns? Seeing none, I entertain a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Introductory number 38, authorizing an agreement to conduct a tour of historically black colleges and universities for city youth. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Move to adopt.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Introductory number 39, authorizing an agreement with SK Concerts Incorporated for concert series management services. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Introductory passes. Introduction number 40, authorizing a license agreement for the use of water sports facilities at the Genesee Valley Park. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Entertain a motion?
So moved.
Did I hear a second? All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Introductory passes. Introduction number 41, authorizing an intermunicipal agreement with the County of Monroe for water testing services at the Durand Eastman Beach. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Entertain a motion?
Moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Introduction passes. Introduction number 40, authorizing a grant agreement with the Rochester Area Community Foundation and funding for the Youth Voice One Vision program. Any questions, comments, or concerns? I'm sorry, introduction number 42.
So moved. I'm sorry. Motion. Second. Pass. Whatever.
Can I entertain? wait, no, I messed that up. Introduction number 42, authorizing a grant agreement with the Rochester Area Community Foundation and funding for Youth Voice One Vision program. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain. I'm an employee of the Rochester Area Community Foundation.
Thank you. One abstention. Thank you. Motion passes. Introductory number 43, authorizing intermunicipal agreement for the funding for the Stop DWI program. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Councilmember Clifford.
Thank you. I know I asked the question about the sort of DWI future for driving under the influence of marijuana, which I think other communities are dealing with across the country. And am I correct in sort of assuming that the major DWI efforts are led by the sheriff's office? Is that right?
Not necessarily the sheriff's office.
Or the troopers? State police.
State police,
Thank
yeah.
you. Okay. So I guess I'm wondering about the potential budget impact for us as we have to adjust to what seems to be the legalization of marijuana. So I guess I was just trying to give some thought to what that's going to look like for us on the non-enforcement side. So are there other things that we need to be thinking about?
As it pertains to the legalization of marijuana, a number of mayors from across the state have been really asking the governor and the legislature to consider the impact to cities and to share some of the revenue for us to be able to provide some of that, not only to communities that have been impacted by and decimated by some of the enforcement and the drug activity in the neighborhoods, but also what we would need to be doing as far as public safety is concerned. And we just had a call with the governor's team, and they understand all of our concerns, and hopefully as part of the legislation we'll be putting in some dollars to support not only our police department but also those neighborhoods that have been most impacted.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Entertain a motion?
Moved.
Need a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Introductory number 44, authorizing agreements and funding for an animal population control program. Any questions, comments, and/or concerns? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Is there any other business to come before the Public Safety, Youth, and Recreation Committee? Yes, ma'am, Madam President.
Vice President McFadden, do you want to be counted in the affirmative for votes 36 through 38?
38, yes.
Yes.
All right.
Good catch.
If there's any other
Our clerk
business to
here.
come before, if there's no other business to come before the Public Safety, Youth, and Recreation Committee, we are adjourned.
The public hearing will begin at 5 o'clock. The public hearing and the committee of the whole will begin at 5 p.m. Why do we got this? We don't have the committee of the whole. Oh, okay. So we will,
We got to call Committee of the Whole.
we'll call to order the committee of the whole.
Councilmember Clifford? Councilmember Evans? Councilmember Gruber?
Here.
Councilmember Lightfoot?
Present.
Councilmember Ortiz? Councilmember Patterson? Councilmember Spall?
Here?
Vice President McFadden?
Here.
President Scott?
Here. We have with one item, introductory number 45, and that's amending the city charter with respect to establishing the Rochester Police Accountability Board. Are there questions or comments? That shouldn't be on this list. I'm sorry. Would take rewind. We're not. That's not on here today.
Yeah, it's,
Hold
Oh.
it. Hold it.
Okay, so that's what we're doing. We're introducing this to be held for next month's meeting. Okay. Is there? So that item will be held, so the meeting is adjourned. Okay. That's crazy. Doctors Gruber and Dr. Spall.
Councilmember Clifford, Councilmember Evans, Councilmember Gruber, Councilmember Lightfoot, Councilmember Ortiz, Councilmember Patterson, Councilmember Spall,
Here.
Vice President McFadden.
Here.
President Scott.
Here, I'd like to ask the clerk to begin the hearing.
Pursuant to law, a public hearing will now be had on the following matter: determinations and findings relating to the acquisition of properties to establish a new Goodman Section office for the Rochester Police Department and a new neighborhood service center for the city's southeast quadrant. Introductory number 5.
Before we move to speakers, I'd like to know if there's anyone here to, from administration to speak on this.
Good afternoon, Council President Scott. I have with me today the city engineer, Holly Barrett, and she can speak to you and the assembly on the proposed Goodman Section Police Station.
So Holly, if you speak specifically about the history of the project in terms of community outreach that's been done to date as well, please.
Okay, we'll speak to the search criteria, the public outreach, where we're at in regards to the level of planning where we're at, and the actual community outreach that has been done to date.
Thank you.
Good evening. So for the last 2 years, we have been looking at all of the different section office locations and the missing locations, and as it relates to our Goodman section, the current Goodman section office is actually not in the correct RPD 5 section model location. It's in the Clinton section at 630 North Clinton Avenue. So our charge was to look at and find a site within the actual Goodman section. The Goodman section is actually 10 miles north to south and goes all the way to Durand. So we wanted to find something central within that section. The first thing we did was look at programming. We determined that approximately 100 staff members would need to be at this location, and we also determined that there was a great desire to include a neighborhood service center. From that, we looked at very specifically the needs of the staffing. We evaluated sort of the wish list of all of the grand things, and then we did some sort of early value conceptual engineering reductions and came up with the fact that we need approximately 18,000 square feet for our actual building and approximately 150 parking spaces. So the parking spaces include not only the patrol cars, but they allow for shift changes and personal cars, and also a separate, less secure section that's very visible and usable for the public for the neighborhood service center. So we established, based on the building needs and the parking needs, that we would need approximately 3 acres. We also wanted something that was on a bus line, and again, something that also was very accessible to the neighborhoods. So we looked at approximately 22 different sites. We looked at rental properties, we looked at vacant buildings. You know, a lot of times we would go to what we thought might be a really nice site and realize that the renovation to bring buildings up to a certain code or to meet our operational needs would actually be more expensive than a new build. So that was sort of part of our learning process. Over time and through a lot of, you know, fitting that puzzle piece throughout our section, we identified this as really an ideal site for all of the reasons that I just stated. So at that point in October, we had our first public meeting to outline really the details of the process and really sort of show our line of thinking to reducing it down to this site. We introduced at that meeting our general concept, a layout that included a closure of Laura Street at that end to really allow for a much more public flow, allow a community space for the actual neighborhood service center, and then to strategically put some of the police facilities sort of behind, a little bit separate, to really meet their needs. So that meeting, we introduced that concept to get some early feedback on that. And the next step will be to issue a request for proposals to get consultants on board to actually engage on the full design.
Also, I'd like to add, in conjunction with the site selection, we're also in the process, and we're doing neighborhood outreach to do a full street reconstruction on East Main Street, going from Goodman Street to Culver Road. So this was part of the thought process also to make sure that when we do this street reconstruction that we're adding in all the stakeholders and making sure that folks from home leasing, RGRTA, the Emma neighborhood, Beechwood have been involved and engaged as we look at changing this streetscape and what's going on in that section of our city that basically needs some attention. We will have the opportunity to reclaim basically a site that was on the state's brownfield plan that's been remediated. That's now we're in the certification phase, and we'll be able to change a lot that also had some issues with it from a contamination standpoint that will be brought back to a useful life. And we are dealing with just a minimum number of properties that may have had some occupancy involved with it. But we are in a position where we can reclaim some very problematic, contaminated properties and have them reclaimed and turned back into a useful life cycle.
So the community outreach activity was what?
We had a community outreach meeting at the Ryan Center. We reached out with Beechwood and the different neighborhood associations there. Not only was members from the mayor's team there, but also members from RPD, the Rochester Regional Transit Authority, the Neighborhood Service Center, the Dries area, folks from Emma, and different neighborhood associations were all invited, and it was well attended. And I was there, and Holly gave a presentation on the actual plan. The chief at the time gave a presentation on the plan, and the Captain Kyler gave a presentation. So all the stakeholders from the city side, the administration side, was there addressing the specifics of this proposed location.
I'll also note that once we get into the design process, we'll have additional public outreach as we start working out the details of the design. So this is just the beginning of the process.
Just like you to cover that point again. So this is the beginning of the process, and you haven't gone to design. How much longer? How long is it? Do you think it's going to take you to get through the design process?
Well, the first part, Councilperson Patterson, is the land acquisition. Part of the land acquisition is there's a process called seeker, and we're in the process of doing that at the same time. Once we have that in place, we can give you a updated time schedule. But what we would like to do is do it in coordination or in sequence with what we're doing on East Main Street. This is basically a time where you're going to see, where you've seen a significant investment on that corridor, and we think if we do it smart, we do it right, it has an opportunity to really have a positive impact on that gateway.
So, but like a rough time frame, a rough time frame, do you have one in mind?
As soon as the seeker process is completed, I don't want to give a time frame that I can commit to. Right. But once we have the property, we will fast track it and have this thing, hopefully done within a. I'm not going to give you a time frame, but we're going to make sure that we move on at a very good pace to complete this.
So Commissioner, I think that one of the questions that we have, and I think there where a lot of just kind of the fear of the unknown is, so when I get what you're saying is that we can't give a timeline for perhaps for that part of it, but this whole portion of acquisition and the way the process works in terms of notification to tenants, it's my understanding that all of this, unfortunately, it becomes public, but based on the way the process goes, there isn't that direct contact yet because nothing's been fully negotiated with owners, right? So if you could just give us a better idea of how exactly does something like this work, process-wise, milestones, timing, and what are we talking about when you keep saying acquisition of the properties? What does that part of the timeline look like versus the design and everything else?
Well, I'm not a real estate expert, but it's my understanding that our real estate team has been reaching out to the majority of the actual property owners, and that they're working out an actual agreements or settlements on how to actually procure those properties. That's my understanding. But we have Commissioner Muhammad, who's here, who can talk to you briefly about the process and where we're at with that.
Okay.
Yes, I just can reiterate what Commissioner Jones just said, that our real estate team have been in conversation with the individual property owners. We have not finalized any purchases as of yet, but when we do that, that's when we will continue the conversation with the property owners and then move to the residents.
So, again, is there any type of indication in terms of timing, in terms of, you know, we hope to have met with everyone by X. We hope to have agreements by a month from now, 2 months from now. Again, I think the issue is the fear of the unknown. No one has any idea of what we're looking at in terms of timing for then people to better understand what's about to happen.
Councilperson Ortiz, one of the steps in the process is getting the approval from this distinguished body before we can move to that next step. Once we have approval from this body, then we can give you an accurate timeline on how we're going to proceed. We can't go and make that determination or any offers without having your approval first.
I hear what you're saying, Commissioner. If you get approval on next two Tuesdays from now, what are we looking at for timing? I guess I'm not understanding why it's such a difficult question to kind of get a general idea of how this process works.
We can get back to you and give you a proposed timeline with the assumption that we have an approval from this body to move forward, and we'll let you know what the actual schedule would be.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Spall.
So is I'm trying to understand my council members' concerns, actually. Are you concerned about the tenants? Are you concerned about the neighborhood that is divided perhaps in approving this? Are you so I'm not sure I'm following what are we asking for?
Right.
These things always take much longer than we ever imagined. It's like if you have your kitchen done, right? They say 6 weeks and it's 6 months. So there's that. Right. But what are you hearing that's making you concerned, or what's on your mind? Because I might be able to help. So I don't know what it is.
So I think it's twofold, and you mentioned both of the things right there.
Okay.
I think that there's at least questions that have been bouncing around to various council members, and you know, questions in general about the timing of the contact to tenants. And I've seen over and over again that we will make individual contact with every tenant. I've seen all of that. I think the question is, what does that timing look like?
Okay.
But I think also in general, what does the timing of this whole acquisition look like as well? So I think it's...
And is the second question because the neighborhood wants to know, or you're just interested in process?
Well, I think it's both. I think there are people in the neighborhood that want to know, and I would like to know.
Yeah, because I'm not hearing from the neighborhood in terms of the large groups. You always have a couple of voices. I've heard actually the opposite. So, let me help you with that, because I don't want you to be out there on it's an East District problem. So, and I have heard an enormous amount of support. I think what's going on is we can't approach a tenant until we've got something to approach them with. So you're right. I mean, we can't, and I'm not speaking for the commission, I'm trying to think of this myself. If we're going to tell someone we want to talk with you about relocation or buying your property or whatever, then we need to know it can't be in case this happens or suppose it happens. So But I hear what Councilwoman Ortiz is saying. If we go ahead and we approve on the 19th, will you then almost immediately be reaching out to the tenants to give them the kind of information they need and the decision they need, and how soon does that happen?
Yeah, that would happen immediately as soon as
Okay.
we get this. But as far as the moving process, I think Commissioner Jones said it best. We will send a schedule, but I mean, I could sit here in confidence and say, this is not going to be a 30-day thing.
Right.
This is not going to be, unless someone says, look, I got a place, just give me the money. But we're not, I mean, we can't do that. We're not going to do that.
I mean, we might be talking about 2021. I know that sounds crazy, but we actually might, right? It seems like a long timeline, but it
For the construction?
For the actual construction and demo and doing what we have to do, it could be into 2021. Or, I mean, I think that's okay to say. It's much, much longer than you think. But I think the point that we have is that if people are getting questions, and I've had some, I've talked to obviously lots of people, we want to make sure they're not worried or scared or left in the dark. And that, I think, is a really valid question that Jackie's raising. So.
Yes. And it's not the Peeler site.
Right.
This is where people live.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we have to be.
You have to be really, yeah.
We have to be mindful of our process. We have to make sure that we are communicating.
Right.
People don't understand because it is a scary thing.
Yeah.
But this is not the Peeler site.
Yeah. So Jackie, what would satisfy you by the 19th? Would you want to vote and then get a timeline, or I'm trying to figure out how to help move this or not.
I guess for me, this is not the first time we've ever had to take properties in order to complete a project. And I understand that every project is different, but for the most part, the major milestones are fairly similar in terms of how the process generally works. So what does it typically look like for the major milestones and the timing between them? That way we have a good idea of what we're expecting on this, and it might alleviate some of the questions or concerns. General timeline, major milestones for a project like this whenever you get approval.
Could I add on to that, President Scott? That maybe, given that the last time that we did this had to do with the Bull's Head project and the amount of acquisition that was necessary there, could we get an update on where we are with the Bull's Head properties in terms of acquisition? And that might give us all a better sense of, obviously every property is different. There are going to be different issues, but at least it would give us a sense of, are we looking at 6 months? Are people looking at a year, 2 years?
Yeah, we can do that.
Thank you.
And at this point, unlike with Bull's Head, we're talking about acquisition and through negotiation, not eminent domain. So I understand there's moving timelines in terms of the whole project, but once an acquisition with the owner is discussed, we should have as much time as we need on the back end to ensure that every tenant is not just awarded the dollars for the moving costs, but also works one-on-one with whether it's a counselor from the housing council or someone in NBD staff to ensure that everybody has housing before there's any evictions, correct?
Correct.
I think that's what Councilmember Ortiz and I have been asking about, that like we just need to hear that matter of factly, that no one's going to be evicted with 30 days to move and here's $1,000, so call it a day. There's going to be ample time because this is negotiated acquisition.
Well, the process would allow the time for folks to come up with alternative locations to live. And it's not like we're going to get approval on the 19th and then give them 30 days to move out. We have more things to do at the site in regards to environmental assessments, the demo package, any remediation that must go on there, any geotech survey, the design of the actual design of the actual facility, the site work, the site prep work, utility coordinations. We have a time cushion that's associated with that. So as we move forward, we can probably give you a real good time schedule in regards to when they would actually have to leave the property. But there's going to be a certain amount of time associated with the tenants and the property owner being able to leave the property and find alternative housing.
Sure, and what we heard last month during committee meetings from Mayor Warren, almost verbatim, I don't have the exact recording in my head, but that I believe there's 15 units that we're talking about, and that each of the 15 units would be contacted, not through a mailed postcard, but through a knock on the door, a call on their phone. There's going to be direct contact with each of the 15 units. And it would seem to me that there's enough time to do that in a methodical and respectful way for everyone. And I think that's what I need to hear, some type of confirmation that that's true. I heard it last month from Mayor Warren. When I asked the questions in the the Q&A sessions, I don't get the same direct response often that I got from the mayor on that. But that is my expectation, that each of the 15 units will have someone reach out to them directly, and there will be ample time to find new, safe, quality, affordable housing with moving expenses covered.
Well,
let me just say, we'll send you what you're asking for. That's what we're gonna do. We'll send you the schedule. We'll send you what we're asking for, because maybe we can't translate it like the mayor, but we can write it on a piece of paper.
I appreciate it, Commissioner.
All right. Okay, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, we'll now proceed with public hearing.
Any persons desiring to speak in reference to said matter will now be heard.
Hi, Council. I am a resident of the Bay Goodman area. This is close to where I live, and I don't see the need for this proposal, specifically spending $33 million on new police substations when there are so many issues in the neighborhood that aren't being addressed. And I would love to see that kind of funding being invested in things like safe, affordable housing, libraries, community centers, and basic resources that everybody in the community can appreciate. We already spend more per capita on policing than neighboring cities like Buffalo and Syracuse. So this proposal does not seem in the best interests of the neighborhood or the city in my mind. But thank you very much for your time today.
Are there other speakers? We have a three-minute limit, and if you provide your name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Chris Barilla. For the past month, I have met with residents in the Beechwood neighborhood to talk about this proposed police station. I talked with tenants on Laura Street, tenants on Hayward Avenue and Garson Avenue, and all the tenants on Laura Street did not know about this proposal. Many of the tenants on Hayward and Garson did not know about this proposal and were not a part of any input sessions. Having one input session in October, I don't think is enough for a project of this scale. And, it begs the question, who is being served by this police station? What community is being served by this police station if so few people were actually a part of the decision-making process? An answer to this could be found perhaps in the city's own 2018-2019 budget. In the section on safer and more vibrant neighborhoods, the city took a troubling note from a community input session. The suggestion was to incentivize neighborhoods and neighborhood associations to identify problem houses and problem residents. With input like this, how can we not expect the outcomes to lead, or how can we expect this plan not to lead to the same outcomes that plague our criminal justice system now, where disproportionately people of color and poor people are targeted by police? We can no longer expect police to manage a series of connected social problems rooted in poverty, joblessness, segregation, and the criminalization of drug addiction. The police station is not for the residents on Laura Street who will be displaced. The police station is not for the mother I talked to who lives on Hayward Avenue. This mother is more concerned about keeping her teenage son interested in school and out of trouble, while also managing a tight budget. She's already thinking about leaving her apartment on Hayward Avenue because the rent is too high. The police substation is likely to raise rents and increase property values in the neighborhood. How does this police station help her? We should be investing in community resources that uplift vulnerable populations, not policing that will target them. An example is the Stop the Violence campaign that has been an encouraging campaign on this front. We need to engage with public safety issues in a more constructive way. If the issue at hand is preventing crime, this police station is going to lead to more arrests and putting more people into the system, perpetuating the cycle of poverty and crime. We should be investing more in programs like teen empowerment, Pathways of Peace, and Save Our Youth that are life-affirming community resources for vulnerable populations. We spend $141 million on police a year and $500,000 on crime prevention and youth outreach in the city budget. We need to start changing our priorities, invest less in policing and more in programs that address the root of crime and poverty in our city. The $33 million planned for these police substations, or projected, could go a long way for these programs. So let's please do not use eminent domain to displace these residents on Lower Street, and let's take this money, create an alternative proposal for life-affirming community resources and services. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mercedes Phelan. I'm the lead organizer for Citizen Action New York, and I'm also a resident.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Hi, so I'm Mercedes. I'm the lead organizer for Citizen Action New York, the Rochester chapter, and I'm also a resident of the Beechwood neighborhood. I live on Parcells. Yeah, overall, I'm really disappointed so far that how the process has been handled. I feel there's been no transparency. I was, as a resident, in no way notified that this was a possibility. I'm also a parent of the district, and our school is in a large deficit right now, and that $33 million spent on police should be going towards our children. Another issue I have with this is, $1,000 for uprooting people from their homes is not enough. It's just not. I moved back in September to the Beechwood neighborhood, and I had to pay over $1,600 just for security deposit and first month's rent, and yeah, it's just ridiculous. So I hope that the council really considers not doing this. We don't need another police station. Trust me, I see police going down my street every single day, all day. There's enough of them. We need to use the money for funding for children and better ways to revitalize our neighborhood. Thank you.
I'm Dave Setlafadius. I live on Kansas Street, which I believe is in the service area for this proposed police station. I have I have a lot of concerns about this, but one about using eminent domain for this one location. My understanding, if you're going to use eminent domain, that would be because there really isn't another feasible place for something that supposedly is in the public good. And I can list you a bunch of places that I think would be more appropriate than a section of our city that's starting to have gentrification creeping in, is going to end up with displacement. Goodman Plaza comes right off the top of my head, but there's a couple of places on Culver and one off around Merchants, especially if this district goes all the way to Duran. That would be a little bit more central and I think would be more appropriate. Secondly, at a meeting I was at on Tuesday, I started to hear stories about property owners who are already starting to take action against people who live in these properties and tenants to get them out now. And so we're talking about if the tenants haven't been notified yet, well, that's fine. The property owners seem to have, and they're starting to not renew leases and to take other things. And so now these tenants who are living there are not going to get this expense money to move. So we've already put these wheels in motion a little bit to the point where it is starting to affect the tenants already. And I'll reiterate with a few other details with some of the other speakers have come up and talked about that if we're going to spend this kind of money on police stations, first of all, we're talking about putting neighborhood service centers in these buildings. A lot of people who will want to come and take advantage of the centers might not want to go to a police station. Putting them together in the same building probably isn't the smartest thing. I think you're going to see a decrease in the use of those services because folks don't want to hang around a police station. Secondly, again, and I've said this before in front of you guys, using our money to increase and really rely on the police to do things that they're not equipped and they're not trained to do, and that police shouldn't be doing, like things that deal with mental health services and dealing with domestic disputes, when we should be spending our money on mental health counselors that could be responding to 9/11 calls, at the very least with the police officers, if not instead of. We're basically throwing more money at the police to make sure to solidify the roles that that we're giving them that they shouldn't have. And we keep cutting services for Pathways to Peace, for the libraries who are not open 7 days a week, for recreation centers, when this money can be used to do these things that we know prevent crime rather than to responding to crime. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paul Flansburgh, and I'm a member of Enough is Enough. Just this past weekend, we suffered an awful defeat. Benny War, whose police brutality situation started Enough is Enough, was given $1. The jury deliberated on what happened to him, and they said, you know what? He deserves $1. A man who was sitting at a bus stop in his wheelchair was brutalized by police who were called to clear the blocks, to clear the street. Well, it's no-brainer to think that he deserves more than this. But it was not a jury of his peers, unless you consider a jury of his peers being all white people when he's black, probably predominantly from the suburbs. It's jury members like that that want more police in the city of Rochester. I don't want more police in the city of Rochester. I want to handle the brutality of the police that's happening already. Let's not add more police. Let's fix what's here. We've got some wonderful people that are really active and engaged in the community. We want police to be held accountable. But instead, you're going to spend $33 million to get more police? You won't even give us $1 million to hold them accountable? By the citizens? The citizens want accountability. The citizens do not want more police. Thank you.
How you doing? My name is Joseph Soto. I'm just a resident from Rochester. I don't live nowhere next to Goodman, but my concern is of the same concerns of everyone else, is bringing more police. But my major concern was not really bringing more police in the system. It's really about the fact that you guys are going to bring more police that don't live in the Rochester area. And that's the major concern I'm hearing from everybody here. And then my next thing was, I believe we should start thinking about putting more law enforcement into the schools so the kids can learn how to be police officers and learn how to respect police officers. That was what I had to say.
Are there additional speakers?
Hi, my name is Allie Dottinger. I'm with the Rochester Homeless Union, and I work with the citywide tenant union. And I think, you know, one of the things that we think about when we'll supply the allowance for the individuals that are going to be displaced to move without any recognition, that over 60% of this city is tenants. And those tenants, that is their home, that is their house. When we displace people in an event to develop things, it's not working out well. And I think that sets a bad precedent for how we see housing. If we are displacing people for something that the community at the end of the day really isn't asking for, we're saying that the voice of a few is more important than the housing that someone has. And I think the lack of attention to the displacement is super concerning. And I think, you know, everyone gets too scared when we throw around the term gentrification, but I really do believe it's happening. And I think, don't get me wrong, the development is good, but when it comes to the displacement of someone's home, I have a real concern with that.
Are there additional speakers?
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Norman Simmons. I'm also just a resident of Rochester, New York. So my main issue is this, because I grew up in Clinton area and I was around right when they built that new police station that was over there at the time, and it didn't change anything. In fact, it gave police more opportunity to come into our neighborhood, which was Fight Village at the time, and just run us off the basketball court for not even doing anything wrong. Police have a lack of understanding of our culture in the sense of urban areas. They don't know the people of urban areas. So how can we put that expectation on them with $33 million to hold them responsible to do a job that they're not doing right now? We have kids now that's going into the system for minor things. It's just probably like weed charges. They're going into the system. Once you get into that system, it's hard to get out of that system. And we need to start thinking about our youth in the sense of setting them up for success rather than putting them around opportunities to put them in a failure situation. Please just really think about this in a sense of meeting people where they are. You know, granted, everybody here probably is at a higher level than our ordinary citizen in Rochester, but we have to come back to the grassroots and understand the state of our people in urban areas. You know, it's not nothing where it's theoretical on paper makes sense. You can't look at it like that. We have to actually be there and understand and talk to the people that live in the neighborhood. We heard 3 different accounts where people came and talked from the neighborhood where they don't want more police. So as a job of councilman, isn't it the job to be the voice of the people? Thank you.
Are there additional speakers? There are no additional speakers. Okay. If there are none, then this hearing is closed.
Pursuant to law, public hearing will now be had on the following matter: approving geometric changes related to the Atlantic Avenue Merriman Street Safety Improvements Project. Introductory number 10. Any persons desiring to speak in reference to said matter will now be heard.
There are no speakers. The hearing is closed.
Pursuant to law, public hearing will now be had on the following matter: amending the official map. Introductory number 30. Any persons desiring to speak in reference to said matter will now be heard.
There are no speakers. That hearing is closed.
Pursuant to law, public hearing will now be had on the following matter: authorizing the acceptance of right-of-way from the New York State Department of Transportation and amending the official map by dedicating for street purposes land to be named Carges Place. Introductory number 31. Any persons desiring to speak in reference to said matter will now be heard.
There are no speakers. That hearing is closed. That concludes our public hearing for this month. Thank you all for coming. These items will be considered at the Tuesday, February 19th council meeting. We are adjourned. I didn't, you know how sometimes if they don't confuse me with the facts, I didn't want to get that wrong.